Recording.
Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to the first program of the season for the Willamette Women Democrats. My name is Veronica Williams and I have the honor to serve as president of W2D. We are very excited to be welcoming Oregon's senior senator, Ron Wyden, to his first program with W2D today, and I'm very glad you could join us. We had hoped to be back in person, but of course that was not possible with the spread of the very serious Delta variant of COVID. We will continue to bring you our programs via Zoom until such time as it is safe for us to meet in person. A few housekeeping matters. As you have joined us, we have muted your speakers and turned off your videos. We do this to provide the overall quality of transmission of the program and to help ensure that our speakers will not be interrupted by accidental noises at your end. So unless I specifically call on you, please do stay muted and with your videos off. Please feel free to put any questions for Senator Wyden in the chat. After his remarks, we will be introducing elected officials, candidates, and other special guests who are in the room with us, and then we will get to your questions. This is the time of year when you can renew your membership or join for the first time. If you were on our mailing list and we had your address, you received a letter with membership and PAC information. It can also be found online at W2D's.com. Your membership makes these Zoom programs possible, and I thank everyone who has already sent in their renewal or has joined for the first time. Your contributions to our PAC also make it possible for W2D to support state and local candidates in important races. Because of the senator's schedule, I'm going to skip my usual opening remarks, except to share this one note. Senator Wyden and I are both Vikings. That is, we both graduated from Palo Alto High School. He was 1 year behind me, and contrary to what he may tell you, he is remembered to this day as a pretty damn good basketball player. So without further ado, I do wish to introduce our program chair, Nancy Murray, who will introduce the senator. Nancy?
Good afternoon. When I set out to prepare an introduction of Senator Wyden, I thought, well, I'll put a few things from his website and Wikipedia and begin. However, I quickly went down the rabbit hole of reading about what the senator is doing about all kinds of issues and where he stands, learning about the finance committee that he chairs, which, by the way, was formed after the War of 1812 and to this day has huge responsibilities. I watched a couple virtual town halls with Oregonians who live in counties I know little about. To date, he has hosted over 970 town halls across the state and makes sure he connects with every county every year. He even made time for a video interview with a precocious 14-year-old from Sisters. The conclusion is that if you want a senator who walks the talk about transparency and accessibility, then Senator Wyden is your guy. All the issues of the day are on the desk of a United States senator, or should be. Of particular interest and expertise to Senator Wyden are healthcare, technology, and tax policy. But he is conversant on just about any issue we care about. Senator Wyden invites your questions today, so please consider those topics, as well as energy, climate change, natural resources, transportation, voting rights, filibuster, forests, wildlife, wildfires, education, international relations, the military, China, and whatever else is important to you. Ron Wyden's parents, no doubt, laid a foundation of the importance of education and service to country. His mother was a librarian who fled the Nazis in the 1930s and volunteered with the US Army. His father, Peter, was recently featured in the Oregonian. Newly declassified reports revealed Peter Wyden, who escaped a Nazi prisoner of war camp and became a refugee to the US, was part of a trained group, the Ritchie Boys. that were integral in American psychological warfare and intelligence gathering that helped secure victory for the Allies. The idea of serving your country was manifest in the Wyden household. Following in his father's footsteps, Senator Wyden serves on the Select Committee on Intelligence. Senator Wyden graduated from Stanford University, then earned a law degree from the University of Oregon. With his dreams of a career in the NBA unrealized, he turned to public service, beginning with teaching courses in gerontology at several Oregon universities and founding the Oregon chapter of the Gray Panthers. He served as an Oregon congressman for 16 years before taking a seat vacated by Senator Packwood and then beating Senator Gordon Smith in 1996. In the best tradition of past Oregon senators and members of Congress, we have not one, but two senators who are comfortable working with the other party to advance legislation in the people's interest. Senator Wyden, thank you for accepting our invitation. Welcome to Willamette Women Democrats.
Nancy, what a wildly inflationary and kind introduction. Thank you so much. And to Veronica as well, great to be with you. I so appreciate your didn't go in more to my shady past, Veronica, but it's just great to have a chance to be with all of you. And I got to start this way. If we were to tackle half the issues Nancy described, you all would be eating your cornflakes on this discussion tomorrow morning. And I've made it clear that what happened in Texas recently in terms of their anti-abortion efforts is just another reason why the filibuster has got to go. And I'm going to honor the spirit of that judgment by keeping it short today so we can have plenty of questions. I think we know that this is really a test now coming up of what our country's values are. Joe Biden is saying, and I'm chairman of the Finance Committee, so it's our job to put together this package, almost all of it. We have to pay for it. Most of the major provisions, for example, like the one I'm authoring to let Medicare negotiate to hold down the costs of prescription drugs, that comes from the Finance Committee. And so we Democrats are saying we believe deeply in physical infrastructure, roads and bridges and transportation systems, but we also believe in human needs, like making sure that our people can afford medicine. And for example, if you get those improvements in physical infrastructure, the roads and the bridges, you still, for example, need to address the concerns of workers who are moving goods over those roads and bridges, who, for example, are very likely to need childcare, which we find in very short supply. I just met with a woman recently who said she spends way more on childcare for our youngster who's a special needs kid than she does on housing. So this is a unique time, and that's why it's so great to be with Willamette Women Democrats. I will mention a couple of other issues, one that we're tackling as part of this budget package, and that is that climate change has hit Oregon and America like a wrecking ball. And we're talking about the bootleg fire in rural Oregon, the horrendous storms in the south, what hit the East Coast in the United States recently. And what I have written as chairman of the Finance Committee is going to be the linchpin of the climate package in the Senate. What I have proposed is taking the tax code and all the provisions on energy and throwing them in the trash and substituting for all those provisions, one for clean energy, one for clean transportation, and one for energy efficiency. And if we do that, we will be able to drive down carbon emissions and achieve the president's goal. And there's not a minute to wait, Veronica and Nancy, particularly because these fires that we're seeing They are not your grandfather's fires. They're bigger, they're more powerful, they leap rivers, and we need approaches that are more than business as usual. We need the kind of bold, clean energy for America proposal that I've made and just described. Finally, let me mention that as part of that effort, we've got a chance to excite young people. And that's what I appreciate about Willamette Women Democrats, because you've always understood that part of what we do is pass the torch. So in this package that we're dealing with for the fall is my 21st Century Civilian Conservation Corps, where we could put thousands of young people to work in the woods. And I think given what we've seen in the last few months, that too is urgent business. So let me use that as kind of an opening salvo, Veronica. This question of women's health, the budget, and physical infrastructure and human needs, and then the future of our kids as we tackle climate change. That would be the way I'd start, but there are plenty of foreign policy questions in terms of Afghanistan. I feel strongly that was a decision that had to be made after Donald Trump and Mike Pompeo negotiated the terms of surrender with the Taliban. We were faced with a choice. Were we going to send hundreds of thousands of soldiers back there for a nation building, no end in sight conflict? And when I talked to Oregon parents, that was not how they wanted to proceed. So there's a whole host of issues, domestic and international. And let's just go to your members' questions and cover what they're interested in. You're muted there, Veronica.
Wonderful. There we go. Thank you very much. I just want to quickly welcome a few people who have joined us. Specifically, former Representative Margaret Doherty is in the Zoom room, and also Tualatin City Councilors Bridget Brooks and Valerie Platt. And if there's somebody I have missed, please drop me a note in the chat and I will recognize you. But we always appreciate when people take time out of their very busy days to join us and to hear what some of our concerns are as we're questioning our speakers.
All three of those people are fine public servants.
They are. So I'm going to look to questions, and I have several that were submitted ahead of time, but I have a couple. Let's talk a little bit about some healthcare issues. So I have one question that talks about lowering the age of Medicare eligibility to 55 or 60 if we can't have healthcare for all. So, and points out the issue of older adults who have lost both their jobs and their health insurance. So if you'd like to speak a little bit to that. We also have a question about telemedicine being permanent across state lines and reimbursable by Medicare. And we have a question about Congress extending the expanded health insurance subsidies that Biden signed in March. So with kind of that group of things, you want to chat on some health issues?
That's a big basket of healthcare, and let me start with Medicare. I strongly support more Medicare type choices, and here's the big decision that finance Democrats and Senate Democrats in particular are going to be juggling. We hope to generate significant savings by getting Medicare in a position where it can negotiate to hold down prices, protect our people who are getting mugged at the pharmacy counter. Our current thinking is that what the country, Democrats, Republicans, Independents are most interested in is using that money to expand Medicare to cover dental and vision and hearing. Now, we're looking at other kinds of areas, which is what this question implies. My sense is that the president, who talked at length at the State of the Union about this, that the first calls are for dental, which is such an important part of Americans' health. And we've seen that Americans couldn't get dental care during the pandemic, and it's caused all kinds of problems. The first choice is for dental, vision, and hearing. But look, more Medicare type choices clearly is an attractive kind of option. And look, we've got to pay attention to some areas that we never looked at before. I recently was on the phone jawboning insurance companies that they ought to start paying for air conditioners and air filter systems, because we had seniors who couldn't breathe given how hot their houses were. And evidence shows that a fair number of the tragedies that we saw where we lost our elders stemmed from problems relating to the heat and the inability to get the kind of cooling systems. So we've got to start looking at healthcare in a broader kind of way. Let's lift that restriction. We're fighting Big Pharma. Big Pharma has been battling me for years. At this time, the people are going to win.
Thank you. Appreciate that one. We have a lot of questions about Build Back Better, the 3.5 trillion reconciliation bill. Any thoughts you want to share on that one and passage? And
well, as I touched on, much of this bill goes to the Senate Finance Committee that I chair, and I do want to link physical infrastructure with human needs. Now, the question is always, how are you going to go about paying for it? Now, I think the moderates have made a fair point when they've said, you know, look, it's important to pay for the areas that are important to you. It's not right to just, you know, run up a big tab and say somebody else is going to pay the bill. What I also think, though, and this is my responsibility as chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, is that everybody ought to pay their fair share. And if you look at the wealth inequality that has grown so dramatically over the last 10, 15 years, we've seen, and we saw these articles where the billionaires basically don't, in many instances, even take a wage. In other words, they don't have income where you usually have your standard for collecting taxes. They basically have all their money, you know, in investments, and there is a kind of notion that if you want to avoid taxes, you buy, you borrow, and you die. And if you do those things, you can avoid paying taxes. And I don't think that's right. When a nurse or a firefighter, maybe somebody who's following this program, pays taxes with every single paycheck, the billionaires should have to pay every year too.
excellent. Thank you. A lot of questions in here, so I'm just trying to figure out which way to go. See where I can. So question voting rights. Are Democrats willing to strip out all the extra provisions, and I'm not sure exactly how that one defines that, they want, and settle for the essentials added to the John Lewis bill so it can pass? So do you have any thoughts on that one?
Failure on this issue of voting rights is absolutely unacceptable. Now, I'm the nation's first senator elected completely by mail. I've also proposed taking the Oregon system nationwide so that everybody could vote the Oregon way. When I'm back there in DC, I also say everybody might want to think about the fact that I'm a Democrat. I'm the first senator elected by mail. The second senator elected by mail was Gordon Smith, and he is a Republican. So Oregon has made this bipartisan. And of course, Donald Trump wanted to force all the social media people to print his lies about vote by mail in Oregon. We're not going to let that happen. We're going to pass a strong voting rights bill. Failure on this issue is absolutely unacceptable.
Well, that one, I think we all strongly agree with you on, because we certainly really appreciate the ability to sit down at our kitchen table and really think about the issues. And of course, now in Oregon, you don't even have to pay for a stamp if you mail it. So it really has increased the number of people who are participating in our elections. And we certainly have a ways to go. to get even more people to vote, but it's really made a difference. I guess there was a question, and this somewhat relates to the reconciliation bill, but it's a little bit more specific, and that is whether the most critical climate provisions will stay in and what's at stake. So of the people who are concerned about this bill, are we seeing strong support on climate, or are we seeing some concerns with some of those provisions specifically?
Are you asking me, Veronica?
I'm asking you.
Well, what I can tell you is I believe you change the kind of route of climate change, which right now is more of these disasters hitting every part of the country, by making changes, for example, that reward clean energy and reducing carbon emissions, the way my tax bill does, and by sensible approaches with respect to carbon pricing, because you also send big signals when there are some real consequences for a disproportional reliance on those polluting sources. And I do think that what the country has unfortunately experienced here in the last month, the period when Congress was in the work period, bootleg fires, incredible problems in the South, on the East Coast of the United States. I think members of Congress are going to come back and say business as usual is unacceptable. And my bill that basically takes the tax provisions on energy that reward all the bad practices from yesteryear and throws those practices in the garbage can will be the linchpin of the effort.
Right. I know we talked a little bit about, at the beginning, like goodbye to the filibuster, but do you want to talk at all about Senator Manchin? I know that's on everybody's mind. He's sort of is the picture boy right now for slowing the Senate down in a way, which is unfortunate because it really should be Mitch McConnell. But how are you guys working with
we're gonna work this out. He's already come out for the standing filibuster, which I used to protect Oregon's Death with Dignity law a number of years ago. And I think that he understands how important the John Lewis, approach. And I remember John Lewis so well. He came to Oregon so many times, and he always said, "Ron, let's go out and make some good trouble." And I remember it like it was yesterday.
So let's talk a little bit about international things. Where do you see us moving as a country post Afghanistan, in terms of how we deal with that region of the world, with India and Pakistan both being nuclear powers? I think that's always sort of tied our hands from my perspective, but I'd love your thoughts on that. And then the US and China, and do we become, the number one enemies, or is there another path that you see?
Veronica, the single most important difference in foreign policy between Joe Biden and Donald Trump is Joe Biden correctly, in my view, believes that all of these difficult foreign policy challenges are ones that are so important for the United States to gather allies to work with us. For example, you asked about China, and then you asked about India and Pakistan. I mean, the way the United States is going to have influence in these regions is by having other Western countries in particular, and countries all over the world, join with us. Donald Trump said that was unimportant. As you know, he said, well, we're the superpower, let's just go it alone. And he called people in so many countries ugly, ugly names, names that would never be allowed at a family dinner table. And he referred to countries that way. That's the single biggest difference. And with respect to Afghanistan, I will just tell you that was a decision that had to be made. Yes, there are going to be all kinds of questions with respect to implementation. I'm on the Intelligence Committee. We'll be looking into that. but I can tell you, if the other course of action, which was essentially sending hundreds of thousands of soldiers back in there, was presented to Oregon families as I did, they said, no way, we don't want to be there as part of a nation building kind of effort that would be a never ending kind of conflict.
Thank you. Let's go in a different direction. We have a question that says, I am concerned that many seniors and disabled individuals can no longer live on their Social Security. This particularly impacts women because so many were paid lower wages during their work life. What can be done to raise Social Security for our seniors to a livable amount, or at least the maximum amount some receive? And then a related question is the question of income disparity as it relates to Social Security recipients and people who really rely on Social Security versus others.
I'm a co-sponsor of the Warren bill, which would raise the benefits for the people that questioner is talking about. I'm not sure how this budget is going to shake out, but I and a number of senior Democrats felt that Senator Warren was on point from the very beginning, talking about the vulnerability of these women, how they didn't have the kind of work history historically that would allow them to get the larger benefit. I think that it is a matter of getting a fair shake for those women, and I support that.
Another question, questioner mentions that Congressman Kurt Schrader recently suggested that Social Security should be means tested. Do you agree with that, or?
Well, first of all, let's remember the way the program works now. There already is an ability to pay feature in the program so that people with the higher, incomes already face
can earn significant
smaller benefits than do the women we were just talking about who didn't have the work history and caused Senator Warren and I to sponsor the bill. So there already is an ability to pay feature, and I support that. And I would certainly not be for a program. When I was director of the Great Panthers, the means test was basically you make $2 over a certain amount and then you don't get the benefit. The ability to pay feature already incorporates the principle we want to be more sensitive to people of modest means than those who are very well off.
There has been some coverage in the news recently that one of the impacts of COVID and the reduction of the workforce has been to move up the years when Social Security and Medicare are not seen as fully funded. And I want to specifically ask about Social Security and whether there is more talk of raising the dollar amount up to which people still have to contribute Social Security. It's been, I think, fairly low for a while.
I do think we should be looking at raising the cap. That's what you're talking about.
Right.
Ensuring more fairness in the collection of dollars. And we're looking at that now in the Finance Committee.
Excellent. Let's see what else questions we have in here. Please put your questions in the chat. We are totally willing to ask them. Okay, we have a question about investment in mental health. And I don't know whether this is really state or how much it is federal, but I'm going to read it's fairly long, but I'm going to read it in full. A recent Oregon Health Forum moderated by Dr. Bruce Goldberg revealed that Oregon ranks towards the bottom for its investment in mental health. The Oregon State Hospital has not admitted civil patients for over a year. We have an excellent program for clients who have been found guilty except for insanity when they have been deemed ready for conditional release, and yet some are unwilling to leave the hospital in part because of the poor quality of community mental health. There is a concern that little will change even though the legislature has given the health authority a large sum of money. Is there anything that you can do at the federal level?
There sure is. And let me be very specific. First of all, the biggest payer of mental health services in America is the Medicaid program, Veronica. That's the federal state program for persons of modest means. And recently, in the spring, I was able to get $1 billion under the Medicaid program that can be secured. Those funds can, along with other states, can be secured through the state government for programs that allow mental health folks and law enforcement to work together to deal with a lot of these challenges on the streets. So that in effect, if a call comes in on 911, the mental health people and the law enforcement people work together. And if it's a law enforcement matter, police, it's a mental health matter, it's mental health folks. So that money is going to be available through the program that I authored, and states and localities are beginning to apply. Also, I'm going to be focused on the mental health needs of veterans and students. We're talking now, right before 9/11, Afghanistan has brought back all these horrendous memories for veterans of what they went through at 9/11 and like. So we're going to need to be there for our vets. And we're seeing mental health claims skyrocket for young people. And I was in Lane County a couple of days ago, and they don't have money for even one acute care bed, not one acute care bed, which means that the patients just stay in the hospital emergency room because there's nothing for them. So you bet the federal government has got to step up, and Senator Mike Crapo, Republican of Idaho, he and I are working together on a mental health package.
Wonderful. So one other medical, I think I asked this a little bit earlier, but I think it got lost in part of the rest of the question. So there was Biden signed into March, in March, extended health insurance subsidies. Are those going to continue? Are those being budgeted in some of the programs that you're working on? The budget?
Yes, I strongly support those programs that provide ongoing tax credits for people who can't afford their premiums.
And so is that going to be in the reconciliation?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, question. Back to the nation's world's most critical issue, health of the planet. Electrification of the economy, including residential, is largely viewed as critical. Current energy incentives, including in your bill, don't go far enough. They don't include electric heat pumps, water heaters, etc. Can you ensure that change is made? It's one of the only ways consumers can impact climate and fossil fuel reduction.
Well, Veronica, I'm pretty sure that my bill, which provides an incentive for clean energy, which I'm pretty sure those pumps are focused on, and clean transportation and energy efficiency are the heart of the bill. I can tell you virtually all the people in electricity, consumers, companies, and others have supported the bill for the very reason that they understand this is the linchpin to greener and cleaner energy.
One of our members wants your comments on, they write, I know many are concerned about the fact that so many Americans are willing to accept fiction as truth as far as the vaccine goes, election results, etc. It seems to make comparisons to Nazi Germany. It's so worrying. I guess one of the questions really is, how do we address some of these issues within the media? I know certainly it's a challenge because people get their information from so many different sources now, but we seem to have a very difficult time elevating the truth to the top of the conversation, I guess I would phrase it. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think about this a lot. I mean, I think you or Nancy mentioned that I've had more than 970 open to all town hall meetings. And I really feel that that's the single best antidote, is to throw open the doors of government. Since then, I've had a lot of virtual town halls during the pandemic. I call that throwing open the digital doors of government. I had a virtual town hall, for example, on my River Democracy Act legislation to protect more rivers. The nominations came from Oregonians. So I think that at a time when government and citizens often seem to be so divided by the polarization, there's still some good news coming out. I have met recently with a number of Native American tribes, and they described how their vaccination rates were going up because they said their tribal leaders were getting vaccinated and then telling kids and grandkids, over 12, they should get vaccinated. So role models, for example, still make a difference in getting the truth out. And that's why Willamette Women Democrats are doing such a service. And I'm probably going to have to run off here in a minute or two, but let's see if we can get another question in.
I do have one, and I think this is really a great question to end with. And it's, what can we do to help our representatives in Congress be most effective? I'm very concerned about the Supreme Court's ruling on the Texas abortion legislation.
Great question.
Last question.
To close on, Veronica. I've always felt, ever since I was director of the Gray Panthers, I was director for almost 7 years, ran the legal aid office for the elderly. I've always said that political change rarely is top down. Almost always it's grassroots up. So when your members send those texts, send those emails, make those calls, go to the rallies, be part of generating petitions and the like, calling their friends in other states and say, my senators, Jeff Merkley and Ron Wyden, they're voting the right way, but your senator may be key to this decision. But it is the cumulative effect of grassroots involvement that's so key. And I think it's so appropriate that we close this way, because that is the DNA of Willamette Women Democrats, is that kind of participation in all facets of government. And I just look forward to working with you. I hope that the truth about my basketball record, since you've given me such an inflationary assessment, the truth about my being on the bench in college doesn't take away too much from your kind words. But seriously, Veronica, thanks for what you're doing. Thanks for you and Nancy. You guys are a great partnership. And why don't I use my limited authority as chairman of the Finance Committee to move, and I'm going to pass it by unanimous consent, that this conversation, this terrific conversation with Willamette Women Democrats, will be put in the to be continued department. And that just passed.
Thank you very much. We are so thrilled that we finally had a chance to get you with W2D, and I certainly know that we will be inviting you back. I will remind all of our members that you are up for re-election next year, so they need to be sure that they are voting and telling all of their friends why. Of course, we record this conversation, so it will be available on our website later in a few days. So if your friends missed it, they can always come in and hear some of Senator Wyden's answers to our many diverse questions. Thank you so much, Senator.
Thanks so much, Veronica. And anybody who has questions on positions or issues and the like, they can go to standtallforamerica.com and they'll be able to see more about my views there.
Thank you, Senator. Have a great day.
Thanks so much.
All right, bye-bye. And thank everybody for all of their really excellent questions. We covered quite a bit of space. I just have a few quick announcements, and then I will probably close out the meeting a little bit earlier, but I want to let you all know that on October the 14th, we will be welcoming State Senator Kathleen Taylor and State Representative Andrea Salinas. Catherine Taylor has been the chair of the Senate Redistricting Committee, and Andrea has been the co-chair of the House Redistricting Committee. And they will talk about the redistricting process, the final results in terms of what was passed or not, and the next steps. So it's a very timely and important topic, and we're really pleased that they could join us. In October, we will be returning to our normal 4:30 p.m. start time. So please be sure to mark your calendars. And we look forward to seeing all of you then. Again, if you have not joined W2D or renewed your membership, please do so. You can find your renewal letter if you're on our mailing list, or you can go to our website at W2D's, and that's the numeral 2.org to renew. Thank you for joining us. Be sure you are fully vaccinated, follow health and safety guidelines. Please stay well, and we look forward to seeing you all in October. Have a very good evening.